If you fail even one of these movements, your body is aging faster than your birth certificate says, and you may not know it until it's too late. These 5 tests silently predict how long you'll live. Most people tuning in right now are about to get a brutal wake-up call. Are you ready to find out how much time you have left? For decades, we've been taught that the big metrics for health are body mass index, BMI, blood pressure, cholesterol, maybe body fat percentage. But growing research shows these 5 movements I'm going to share with you may outpredict many of those classic markers in terms of lifespan and healthy aging. Let's start out testing these 5 movements. For each, we'll do how to pass, whether you pass or fail, what failing means, and how to correct it. Then we'll follow with a quick daily routine you could do in just 5 minutes to improve it. The first movement here to test is called the deep squat. For those watching on YouTube, I will show an image of what this looks like, but for those listening on the podcast, I will explain it so it makes sense. So you're going to begin by standing up straight, feet roughly shoulder width apart, toes slightly pointed out. Slowly descend into the deepest squat you could manage. Heels should be flat on the ground. Head and chest should be upright. Knees should be tracking right over your toes. Thighs at or below parallel if possible. Then stand back up without using hands or assistance. If you pass this test, you've met the following criteria. Heels stayed flat, you didn't lift it off the floor. You reached at least thighs parallel, or even better lower, while your torso remained upright. Knees stayed in line with your feet with no collapse. You stood up smoothly, no obvious wobble or use of hands. If you fit all of those criteria, congratulations, you passed. Here's the fail criteria. Heels came off the floor. Thighs didn't reach parallel, or you couldn't descend without assistance. If your torso collapsed forward excessively and your knees caved in, or if you used your hands or external support to rise. Here's what poor performance means with this first exercise. This means you have limited ankle dorsiflexion or poor mobility. This limits your ability to achieve the depth. This also means you have weak glutes and quads or unstable knees. This increases the knee collapse, which results in higher joint stress and risk of osteoarthritis. All of this contributes to accelerated functional aging of your joints, muscles, and nervous system. Because the squat engages multiple joints, ankle, knee, hip, weak links anywhere increase compensations, inflammation, and risk of future mobility decline. Here's why this matters for longevity before we move on to test number 2. Strong lower body functional capacity is tightly linked to independence, fall risk, and quality of life. Losing that means you're more likely to be disabled, which we know shortens lifespan. If you can't do a deep squat with control, you likely have reduced physiological reserve. In the research on mobility and longevity, we know that muscle strength plus flexibility plus balance all drive lifespan. The deep squat is a quick indicator of many of these. By failing this, you're signaling your body is aging faster internally before your birth certificate age changes. So here are some tips and cues for improvements, and then we'll go on to exercise number 2. If the heels lift, work on ankle mobility, calf soleus stretch, ankle dorsiflexion drills. You can look those up. If the knees cave in, glute medius work, hip abductor work, and mini band sidewalks. If the torso fails and pushes forward during the squat, then braced core / split stance hip hinge drills could help. Incorporate this into your daily routine so you could rebuild the pattern and then retest. Now let's move on to movement number 2, which is the single leg balance. Stand barefoot or wearing socks on one leg. The non-support foot slightly off the ground, hands on your hips as you can see in the image, eyes looking forward. Hold for 30 seconds if possible. Then switch sides. Easy peasy. Here's how you know if you've passed this exercise. You can stand for 30 seconds per leg without wobbling, hopping, touchdown, touching the ground, or grabbing support. Here's how you know if you fail. You cannot hold for 30 seconds. You have to touch your non-support leg down, grab support, or you wobble uncontrollably and even hop. Here's what poor performance on this test means for you. Weak glutes, and hip stabilizers. Poor proprioception and balance, which increases fall risk. Declining neuromuscular control, which is an early sign of an aging nervous system. And reduced single leg strength control means poor movement quality somewhere else on your body. So you might notice this during walking, climbing stairs, which results in higher joint stress. Falls are a major cause of morbidity, mobility decline, and early mortality. So this test is significant. Here's why this matters for longevity. As your balance declines, your functional independence is threatened. Independence equals longevity. If you can't stand on one leg for more than 30 seconds, your body's giving you an early warning sign. You're losing your neuromotor resilience. Even if your blood pressure is fine or your BMI is normal, if your balance is poor, your risk of major mobility loss is higher. So here are some things you can do to improve this movement. Practice single leg stands daily. Eyes open, then progress to eyes closed. Strengthen the hips with lateral lunges and even single leg deadlifts. Do work reaction balance drills where you step on, step off, a low step, or even catching a ball. All of this will help. Now let's move on to test number 3, movement number 3. This is called the toe touch. Pretty self-explanatory, but I'll show you an image and then explain it for those listening on the podcast. You're going to stand with feet together or slightly separated, knees straight but not completely locked. Slowly hinge at the hips and reach your fingertips or palms towards your toes without bending your knees excessively. Here's how you know if you've passed this exercise. You can touch or nearly touch the floor with palms or fingertips with knees mostly straight without excessive rounding of the back or bouncing. Here's how you know if you failed the criteria. You cannot reach below mid-shin, knees must bend deeply, or you must bounce or compensate by rounding the low back dramatically. You feel a strong stretch, in some cases pain. You also fail this exercise if you feel tight hip hamstrings, lower back, or can't hinge from hips. Here's what poor performance means for this exercise. It means you have tight hamstrings and tight hip extensors. Poor hinge pattern, meaning your lower back and hips are overloaded in daily life. When lifting, picking up groceries, picking up boxes, getting out of a chair. Poor flexibility means stiff joints, limited range of motion, poor nutrient flow, and higher mechanical stress on the spine and hips. What's interesting is that some of the research shows that stiffness here may correlate with arterial stiffness. Some research suggests flexibility correlates to vascular health and may reflect systemic aging. So here's why this matters for longevity. The ability to hinge well and have flexible hamstrings and glutes means you're less likely to compensate with your back, less likely to injure, less likely to fall. Reduced flexibility is a marker of connective tissue aging, joint deterioration, and metabolic stiffness. Think inflammation, glycation, all of which we know shorten lifespan. Passing this test signals good posterior chain health, which is critical for everyday movements, athleticism, and resilience as you age. So here are some things you can do to improve this movement. Daily hamstring stretch, standing, seated, or supined with a band. Hip hinge drills, bodyweight deadlift pattern. Dynamic toe touch with slight knee micro bend and gradual reach. You could also do what I love to do actually, foam roll the glutes and the hamstrings to boost mobility. I actually use something called a rumble roller. It's a little bit more effective than a foam roller. I'll put a link in the notes down below for the exact rumble roller that I use and I recommend. Now let's test movement number 4, which is the overhead stretch. This one's pretty simple, as you can see in the image. What you're gonna do is, number 1, stand tall, feet about hip width. Raise both arms straight overhead, biceps by your ears, and reach up. Then slowly lower arms back down. We want those arms overhead without back arching or ribs flaring or trunk leaning forward or back or shoulders hiking. So here's how you know if you passed this test. Arms overhead smoothly without compensation, low back stays neutral, ribs down, no major arcing or forward lean. Here's how you know if you failed this test. You arch your lower back significantly. Ribs flare, shoulders hike, arms cannot reach overhead, trunk leans or compensates. Or if you feel a strong stretch in your lats, shoulder, upper back, or if the movement feels forced. Here's what poor performance means with this exercise. Restricted shoulder mobility, your lats, mid/upper back tightness, or thoracic spine immobility. This limits many overhead tasks like lifting, reaching, or carrying. Poor overhead reach correlates with poor upper body functional capacity. which often links with reduced overall muscle quality. Upper body mobility decline often accompanies general systemic aging, less muscle, more fat, less coordination, and more inflammation. Here's why this matters for longevity. Everyday tasks, something as simple as putting something on the high shelf, reaching into the back seat, lifting your child or grandchild, require overhead mobility. If you begin to lose that, your independence erodes. Also, poor overhead reach may reflect shoulder/upper back onward decline, which often precedes marked mobility loss elsewhere. So this test signals the upper body chain of resilience. Failure equals early aging in that chain. So here are some things you can do to improve this movement. Shoulder mobility drills, wall slides, thoracic extensions, and band overhead reach. Again, you could look all these up. I also like using the rumble roller on your lats and upper back, and then practice overhead reach with light resistance, so a light dumbbell, PVC pipe, to engage the full chain. This brings us to movement number 5 here. This is a simple one. Ground to stand. Here's what you're gonna do to test this out. Sit on the floor with legs out in front, or slightly bent if needed. From that seated position, stand up to full upright position without using your hands or external support and without any assistance. Then return to that seated position. Here's how you know if you've passed the test. You can stand up from the floor smoothly in one continuous motion without using hands, without a wobble or a hop, within a few seconds. The following means you've failed this test. You use your arms or hands to push yourself up, or you have to roll, swing, or compensate heavily. You take many seconds, you're off balance, or you use support. If you failed this test, here's what it means for you. You have weak leg strength, quads, glutes, and poor core/hip control and deficient mobility in your ankles and hips, along with poor overall coordination. The ability to rise from the floor is a fundamental survival skill. When that fails, your functional reserve is very low. In older adults, inability to rise from the floor is highly correlated with loss of independence, hospitalization, and even mortality. Here's what this means for longevity. The exercise, which we just did, SRT, which stands for sit to and rise from the floor, showed a strong mortality prediction. As we discussed earlier, you can think of the ground to stand movement as a variant of that. If you can't get up from the floor without support, should you ever need to after a fall or an injury, your risk of bad outcomes jumps. Essentially, this movement is a fail-safe of functional age. If you fail it today, you're aging faster invisibly. Now, here are some things you can do to improve this movement. Practice floor rises from seated to one side push-up to full stand. Progress by using less of your hands. Combine this with hip/ankle mobility work. We talked about that earlier in some of the drills I gave you. And leg strengthening movements, bodyweight squats, something called Bulgarian split squats. Focus on smooth rather than speed. Failing any of the tests we just went through is not just a tiny red flag, it's a loud alarm. And that alarm is sounding right now for many people watching and listening to this. If you failed even just one of these movements, your body is aging faster than your birth certificate says. So I recommend working on this, retesting, and seeing what happens in the future. Whether you're 65, 75, heck, even 95, you could improve this over time. I want to give you a valuable resource that's going to help you lower inflammation, oxidative stress, which actually will help you do these movements more efficiently. This is a free ebook called How to Lose 1 Pound of Fat. If you've been busting your butt and not losing fat, your body isn't broken, your insulin is. I created a free 7-day protocol that shows you how to drop 1 pound of fat per day without counting a single calorie, or starving yourself, or killing yourself with cardio. You'll learn the exact fasting schedule, food swaps, and fat-burning tricks to finally unlock your stored fat naturally. This is the blueprint for metabolic health, not another gimmick. Click the first link in the description box below, or you could scan the QR code on the screen for those watching on YouTube to get it right now. Don't wait for the New Year's. Your reset starts today. I hope this is valuable for you. Please share it with somebody you know who's struggling with mobility. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And hey, if you love this lesson and if you have failing eyesight, there are 3 tricks to fix your eyesight fast. No glasses needed. I outlined all 3 in a recent video. Here's a clip from that video. Then click the video on the screen and I'll see you there next. Most conventional treatment for vision loss is actually treating the symptoms. Glasses, contacts, surgery. But what if you could support your vision health at a deeper level? Well, there's emerging human research showing you can do it with these 3 powerful ways. Let's start with the first tip. This is going to be red light recharging.